All right, everybody, we're back and ready to go. Thanks again for joining us today. We think we have a pretty, fun, exciting topic to talk about that'll be pretty relevant to everybody. We call it Behind the Battle, Confronting Today's Marketing Trends. What we're really going to look at is where are things going and why do we think they're going there? And what do we think we can do to help you kind of tackle those things? So I'm Tim. I will be your host for today. I'm one of the principals here at Samanal. Talking with me will be Gena. Gena's our resident expert, see into the future, see what's going to happen, and hopefully give you some good advice. So a couple housekeeping items. Today we will be recording this, so if you want to go back and listen to it again, you thought it was so compelling that you had to hear it twice, that will be available. Or if you want to share it with anybody, you will receive a copy at the end of this, or you can access it from our website if that's easier for you. We also have the chat window open, so if you have a question as we're going through, please feel free to drop the question in there. If it's relevant to something we're talking about at the moment, we'll try and kind of stop where we are and answer that. If not, we'll go back at the end and make sure all questions get answered. So with that, we'll jump right into the content. So what we're looking at today in terms of format, just so you kind of know how we're going to go through these topics. What we're really going to do is we've got three things that we think are, trends that are not way out in the future. Likely it's things that you're kind of faced with now, but are going to become real big things in 2020 that everybody's going to have to confront. We're going to talk a little bit about, okay, that sounds challenging. That sounds like there could be some, headwinds and roadblocks associated with this. And then we're going to talk about, some practical applications, practical solutions for how to tackle these. So Gena, why don't you talk to us a little bit about when we say future trends, projections, kind of what are we talking about, both good and bad?
Sure. So as we go through today, let's remember that predictions are educated guesses, right? So sometimes we knock that out of the park. For instance, last year we covered voice search as one of the emerging trends of 2019. At the time, nearly 41% of adults were using smart assistants every day. Now, according to Comscore, that trend continues to increase with projections that at least half of all search in 2020 will be voice, which is why it's so critical for content marketers and creators to start planning now on how they wanted their content to be able to be voice ready. So that was really exciting that we were able to get that out there last year so that people could start planning for it this year and continue planning for it into next year. But there's always room for error, right? So in 2016, David Pogue predicted that Apple would never release a cell phone. In 2007, the first iPhone was released. Apple sold 1.3 million iPhones that year. And, that's not to shame David Pogue, but to illustrate the point that even the most educated guess is still a guess. People are delightfully surprising creatures, and disruption is an ever-present factor in our industry. So as we move through the conversation today, like Tim said, feel free to chime into the chat with any questions you may have regarding these or other trends in the industry so we can address those at the end. But if there's no certainty in trends, why even consider them? The reason we do these forward-looking exercises isn't to pat ourselves on the back when we nail a prediction, but to help our clients and other marketers have a foundation for their planning sessions beyond next year's SMART goals or specific check-the-box marketing material development that we all have to go through. We want to help today's marketers look out for their future selves, so we don't wind up like future Lee, cookie lists, and sad. Or worse, budget strapped when the opportunity presents itself to leverage a new technology or incredibly impactful tactic.
Okay, so one of the things we like to do on these webinars is allow you an opportunity to kind of tell us what's most interesting to you. So we're going to put up a quick poll, and the three trends we're going to talk about today are listed here. Creating a one-to-one customer experience, delivering on that customer experience as a core value within companies, and then building out your marketing technology stack. So we want everybody just to take a second and go in and let us know which of these are you most interested in learning about today. We assume most organizations are different, and some of these will be much more top of mind to some people than others. So take a minute and just click the button and let us know which one you're most interested in. Okay, so it looks like the majority of folks are really interested in delivering on customer experience as a core value. So when we get to that section, we'll make sure to spend a little extra time, or if there are questions around that, feel free to drop them in then, and we'll make sure to dive a little deeper into anything specific you want to talk about. So with that said, let's just jump right into the first one here, the first trend you can't ignore. As we said, that's brands that master one-to-one customer interactions are going to win business. I think we all know that's kind of a fact. A lot of that's due to the rise of digital social media. And we're not talking about, sharing pictures and collecting likes and commenting on a comment that somebody leaves with you. We're talking about a very real, meaningful online experience from the first time they encounter your brands all the way through the ownership experience and the post-purchase life cycle. Now, we know everybody would say our sales team's doing their best, our distribution network is really trying to conquer customer service. But the reality is, in the last 5 to 10 years, people's experience with brands have gone so far beyond the sales team and the distributors, and it can't be ignored. And that's where people are winning. You see the brands that are rising are the ones that have really figured out, outside of our traditional channels, how can we deliver a best-in-class customer experience? So you're probably saying things, if you agree, like, totally, I want to deliver personalization, absolutely. Or things like, well, we should be able to use all this data we have to enrich their experience. We know so much about these people. Let's do that. Let's use the data to drive where we're going with this. All absolutely great points, but what is the problem that we're all facing if we all agree with these things? So it's a few different things. Number one, leveraging all that data and technology. I think everyone would probably agree we have some level of data and we have technology that can help us use it, but how do we access it? How do we sort it? Which technologies do we use to implement it? And then finding the time and resources. We know groups have not necessarily evolved to have all the right skill sets, to have the right team members working together, and to have the right budget behind actually doing something with this. And then if you get all of that done, if you find the right data, you get the right technology, you've got time and resources, okay, now how do we actually go in and implement some segmentation and start to utilize all these things? So that's what Gena's going to talk to us about first, is the solutions of how we can tackle some of these things.
Absolutely. So one of the first ways that people can start leveraging their segmentation and just being available to customers where they are is really focusing on one-to-one interactions. And one of the easiest ways you could do that is letting your customers talk to you directly, right? So letting customers slide into your DMs. Over the last year, we've witnessed a massive insurgence of brands that are leveraging messaging apps to communicate directly with their customers. And it makes sense. WhatsApp has 1.5 billion global monthly users. Facebook is right behind it with 1.3, and WeChat has 1.1 billion. When we look at the US market alone, according to Leesman, private messaging is the second most popular way that consumers are communicating with brands. That same report found that 63% value the ability to make a purchase or pay their bill in app. And it's not surprising when you consider that Messenger app usage has started to significantly outpace social media usage. In 2020, it's not going to matter if you're on Facebook. It's going to matter what you're doing in Facebook Messenger. When you start to look at whether or not you should be investing in messaging apps, the question is quickly becoming not if, but which ones and which apps will have the most reach for me. And there are some people out there that are still saying, does this make sense? Do we need to be using messaging apps? Are my customers actually starting to get email fatigue? Do they experience banner blindness? Is this really something that's going to be helpful to me to kickstart my Marcom efforts? And the answer is yes. I mean, 65% of millennials and 65% of Gen Xers favor messaging over emailing. It's not just something that's fun or popular with Gen Z. There's ample room to stand out in this channel and meet consumer demand, and marketers are going to have to start doing that or they're going to start failing. And I hear you. I don't have time. I have too many other things I have to worry about. And the good news is you can let the robots do it for you. You can personalize your communication using chatbots. So whether you're looking to get started with chatbots and push campaigns, or even just having a dedicated employee or team of reps that's able to be there for your customer, messaging apps have to be a key consideration for the future of your marketing channels. And there are a ton of different ways to leverage chatbots, and we'll talk about some of those a little bit more later in the presentation, but know that messaging has to be a part of your strategy. All right, another way that we can look at future-proofing a little bit is focusing on targeting people and not audiences. According to Forbes, poor targeting has led to 49% of users disregarding display ads. But when customers are served tailored messages, brands see an average return of 36%. That level of hyper-targeting requires a change in how we think about reaching our audiences. It requires us to move from an inflated reach number, so I send out this many impressions, to focusing more on stronger engagement rates and some of those more lower funnel measurements. So what do examples of those look like? You can take a look at ads that target users based on their product line that they've engaged with on your website, or you can look at ads that are leveraging profile data. So what product do they own? How have they shown interest in my brand from a product standpoint? What attachments do they own? What's their application? Any kind of thing that'll lead you to understand more about your customer can help you to start segmenting. And a lot of that data you should already have in-house. So what does that do for me? So before, when you may have sent a broad message to around 10,000 contacts, if you assumed a 1% conversion rate, you're only getting 100 sales. However, hyper-targeting, you may be sending to less people, so say only 1,000 customers, but your conversion rate is going to be significantly stronger because you have a more tailored message. So with a 30% conversion rate, you get 300 sales. A lesser reach, but a much stronger conversion, so your audience is going to drive that greater return. And often that happens at a lower investment because you're not paying for people that you don't need. So hyper-targeting and personalization don't just make sense for consumers. It's driving stronger ROI for marketers.
All right. Thank you, Gena. So we're all on board now that one-to-one interactions are the future. It's where we're going. It's where we need to focus in 2020. Great. The second trend perfectly aligns with that. Your organizations, your leadership are all saying customer experience is now held up as a company value. We all want to deliver customer experience above all else. That's in the champion, that's in the rallying cry, that's in the brand promise, that's in the marketing organization's putting out. Great, then this should be easy, right? You believe it's the right thing to do. Your leadership and your organization believes it's the right thing to do. Great, let's go do it. Oh, but reality kicks in. My leaders have goals that conflict with that. They're still tied to X number of sales in a given quarter. And if I can't show them how this great one-to-one experience doesn't immediately translate to sales, probably not going to get that funded the way I need to do it. And now we're stuck in the mud. Now we're spinning our wheels here. Or to do this, I'm going to have to collaborate across departments. That's awesome. I can do that. But my organization is set up kind of siloed. And while that's awesome in theory, we don't really have any practical way to collaborate across the organization. Okay, so what are we really faced with here? We know what we need to deliver. We know what we need to do. We know we can win if we can meet these customer expectations, and we know our company cares about it. How do we struggle? How do we get past the struggle to get there? I think Gena's got some ideas for us.
Yep, so enter lifecycle marketing. From infancy in regards to engagement with your brand all the way through the ownership experience, or if you enjoy chocolate lab puppies, you can think about it in a puppy life cycle. We know that the funnel is dead, right? We say that all the time. Customer interactions aren't happening across a linear journey with our brand. It's non-linear. That doesn't mean that targeting users at specific points in their life cycle as a customer or prospect isn't critical, because it is, but it means that we can't just think about those campaigns based on moments in a vacuum. What happens is that customers begin to develop an inconsistent experience with our brand, and that starts to impact how they feel about us overall. We know that when customers feel an emotional connection to a brand, the lifetime value of that customer can increase by 300%. An emotional connection doesn't have to be a heart-wrenching connection to advertising. In fact, that's not enough. We call that a hook. It's enough to bring someone into the door, but if they don't like what they see once they get there, they leave. Take, for example, this commercial. It's my favorite commercial. This little boy loads up all of his stuff into a car with his puppy. They're getting ready to go on an adventure. The puppy is being a puppy, of course, which is what makes it so heart-wrenching. And off to camp. Then you flash forward to 10 years, and he's going off to college and saying goodbye to his family, his mom and his dad, and his puppy. Tears every time, literally every time. This makes me emotional. I'm like wiping my eyes now. But love, it's what makes a Subaru a Subaru. I recently bought a new car. The very first place I went was to drive a Subaru, and I didn't love it. I had a borderline identity crisis because I didn't love it. I didn't love the interaction I had with the staff at the dealership. I didn't love the layout of the building and the lot. I didn't love the price point in comparison to the features. I didn't love how frequently they called me after my test drive. I didn't love that the staff wasn't familiar with their online promotions. I didn't hate it. I just didn't love it. And love is what makes a Subaru, which is why I bought a Jeep. Subaru's marketing speaks to me at every level. I knew that I was a Subaru girl, but ultimately I liked my Jeep experience better. I loved their rep at the dealership. I loved their approach to test drives and how simple the purchase process was. I loved the accuracy of the configuration and pricing tools online. I loved how informed they were about every aspect of the vehicle, what the current offers were, etc. And I loved that when they needed to get a hold of me, they texted me, because I don't answer my phone. Let's be honest. They understand me, and I can't tell you what the tagline for Jeep is. It's not drive happiness, but it should be, because that's what the experience is like, happiness. And when it's time to service the machine, I'm going to take it to them, not because they're the experts. I don't always buy into that, and not because they have the best price. In fact, I know they probably don't, but because I like them, and I know it will be easy, because they made it easy to like them from my very first browsing session online to my ultimate decision to give them my money. If you're saying, sure, that's an entire organizational shift though, and I can't drive that change, you can start to solve for it online for what you can't fix offline. Why not exploring making the online do more of what offline reps can do? One of the easiest ways to start doing that is looking at interactive content. Since 2014, consumers have been requesting more and more visual and interactive content anyway. Seriously, like 91% of consumers. By the most recent measurements, as little as 10 to 30% of B2B brands are delivering on those desires, which is insane. When you look at the overall performance and statistics of interactive content, that doesn't make sense. I mean, imagine if you could increase your engagement by 20% just by employing better content. Interactive content can be served in so many different ways. It can be a game or a tool or a calculator that allows you to assess the best recommendation for you based on your situation. The example here helps consumers assess which piece of heavy equipment is the best fit for them based on the work they do, their production levels, how they define value, because that can be different for different people, and other critical questions, and it will provide a recommendation with more links about ways that they can learn more about the equipment, procurement options, etc. When you employ interactive content, you just get more out of your investment. You have more conversions. Interactive content creates 2 to 3 times more conversions than passive content. You get more traffic. Interactive content generates 4 to 5 times more page views than static content. More education. Users ranked their interactive content as being 93% more effective at educating the buyer versus static content. Imagine if you could take all of the brilliance of your sales staff and put some of that on the web and have digital consultation for a customer so that they're able to more effectively understand your product as well as form a stronger emotional connection to it, which drives that more engagement piece. 91% of B2B buyers prefer to consume interactive content and visual content. It's what brings them joy. It's what makes them happy. It's what makes their lives easier. And it lets you start to control more of the offline to online data process and experience. Another way that you can look at future-proofing for customer experience and an easy thing to get started, although more challenging to start to build out, but a good conversation to be having, is loyalty programs. There's a ton of different ways to reward your customers, whether it's free coffee or a giant rewards library. 73% of consumers are more likely to recommend brands with good loyalty programs. And 79% of consumers say that loyalty programs make them more likely to continue doing business with brands, according to Bond. 66% of consumers will actually modify their brand spend to maximize loyalty benefits. Consumers like our own Tim Leesman.
Yeah, so when we first started talking about this, I pride myself on being a pretty practical consumer. I generally don't let brand loyalty blind me to a good deal or a good value or this is the product I want. But as I started to really think about it, I realized that I had subtly become super brand loyal to the MGM brand. Now, I am a Vegas fanatic. Take that for whatever you want about reading into my personality. But I love Las Vegas. It's great. I've been going for 20 years, multiple times a year. And what started out as me just gambling at an MGM property and them offering me a free meal or a free drink slowly turned into me becoming very, very loyal to them, to the point where because of the experience I had and because of the perks they gave me and because of the way I was treated by the real people I dealt with, by the staff in the rooms, by the website, by the apps that I use, all of the things that made up that customer experience led me to increase my loyalty to them without even really realizing I was doing it. So what started as I like to gamble at this casino turned into I'm going to stay at this hotel, turned into I'm going to go to shows at this property, turned into I'm going to eat my meals at MGM property, turned into I'm not gambling or eating or doing anything that doesn't involve MGM properties. So again, it wasn't an intentional decision. I didn't set out to say I'm going to find a partner in Las Vegas that I do all my business with. But over the years, they provided such an awesome customer experience that they now have virtually 100% of my business anytime I go there. So I felt like that was a really, to me, great example of someone who's like, I'm not super into loyalty programs. I'd rather buy what I want to buy. This was one that really got me in a way that wasn't overt. So I really appreciated that example. If you can build that with your customers, that's, I think, kind of the ultimate gold standard of what any brand should shoot for.
Which continues to be true across the board. You see that people will do things for those sweet points that they wouldn't have otherwise done. They'll modify their behavior, whether it's always buying coffee from you because they want that free coffee, or putting all of their points on your card because they want air miles, or even if it's just every time I shop at this location or with this brand, I use my membership benefit so that I get free shipping. Like very simple things that will allow people to engage with your brand is one of the best ways to drive loyalty.
So it looks like we have a question that somebody has submitted. And it looks like it's around, that's great when it's a positive experience, but what about when you have kind of a negative customer experience? How do you deal with that when you're not necessarily structured or set up to do that? That in and of itself is a big question that would probably take most of the rest of the webinar, if not the coming days and weeks, to really tackle and dive into. But I think the same fundamental thinking applies to whether you're trying to create a great experience or deal with a negative experience. Your brand has to be committed to this space. You have to commit resources, dollars, experts, people, have a strategy, have a plan, and know this is how we're going to do this. And we're going to do our best to turn a negative experience into a positive experience. If you only build a plan to deal with the positive, you don't really have a plan, because as we all know with social media, it often is a platform that thrives much more on negativity than it does on positivity. So I think in a short, what can fit in this webinar answer, it's really about when you build your strategy, you've got to build a strategy for how are we going to deal with the negative too, not just building a plan that only deals with best case scenario of everybody loves us and everybody only engages with us in a very, very positive manner.
Absolutely. I think one of the ways that we talk through customer experience, like feedback loops, is really about having customer experience advocates and some kind of tracking system for that. So whether it's a ticketing system that monitors complaints across platform that pulls them in, if it's ongoing customer surveys that get inputted into a different source, I think it's just important to remember that, like your brand happening across multiple locations, online, offline, stores, across social experiences, you can't have a singular approach for managing customer experience issues within a system. You can always aggregate all of those issues into a place, but you'll still have to do some level of aggregation and ongoing training and focusing on customer advocacy as a part of your brand promise and not just marketing communications.
I mean, I think from a what's the worst things you can do perspective, if we're talking, strictly about social media, because I think most organizations have their, in-person sales force or customer service force trained on how to diffuse those, but social is a much trickier issue. I mean, I think the worst thing you can do is, number one, delete it and just be like, I don't want to deal with this, or I don't want people to see it, so we're just deleting all the negativity out. If you're that is not the way to go. That will cause much more blowback, because likely that person who sees their comment gets deleted is now only going to be emboldened to come at you even stronger and to let everybody in their network know, hey, this brand's deleted me out. I'm not looking for it. So I think you can't ignore it. You can't give just stock answers of, thank you for submitting this. We'll get back to you with an answer, and then have no real plan of how you're going to re-engage them and give them an answer. They put it there because they want some level of satisfaction and engagement, that someone's listening, someone cares. So again, back to having a plan, you need to have a plan of how am I actually going to engage with someone when they're at this point online. So thank you for the question. That is a big one that most organizations face. All right, so our last topic, circling back to the first two, I guess we all agree that one-to-one customer experiences are what's going to win the day. Hopefully we now have our leadership on board, and we're going to structure our organizations the right way. We're going to fund it. We're going to break down the silos. We're going to put the money behind really tackling this and delivering a best-in-class one-to-one experience. You're now empowered as marketers to go make it happen. Now I have a tool to do this. I have my marketing technology. It's great, but it doesn't work with a lot of our other systems. That's not great. Also, if you do have things already set up, if you're kind of that far along your journey, you're like, this would be a lot easier with artificial intelligence, but we're just not there yet. How do we get there? So both of these are probably common things that affects the groups that are even totally bought in all the way down to the org structure and the funding. You still have to have your technology in order to make it work. So really, what is the main problem we're talking about here? It's honestly, not to name names, but somebody probably bought technology without a plan. They went to a conference, they were told by somebody, this is an awesome technology, it'll help you better solve X problem, and they bought it. And maybe they bought 8 of these technologies to solve 8 of those problems without ever really having a plan. And now as a marketer, you're stuck with a stack that doesn't work together, doesn't talk together, it's disconnected, but you've already made the investment. Nobody wants to just kind of walk away from that investment, and you're told, figure out how to make it work. Okay, what am I supposed to do at this point? I think that's where we can really try and start talking about some solutions to how do we deal with this problem.
Absolutely. One of my other favorite problems that often comes up in this space is we've built our entire technology stack on supporting this one legacy system that doesn't make sense anymore, but we had to keep building on top of it and building on top of it and turning it into Frankenstein's monster. So now we have to continue to operate within that program. How do we do that with newer technology? And that's a hard one to solve for too, and we'll absolutely jump into a couple of ways that you can start to make your technology be smarter and not harder. One of the easiest ways that you can do that is looking at artificial intelligence. We don't have to write off AI. A lot of people are on board with the idea of it. Most marketers, in fact, fundamentally support the use of AI. They just think that they aren't there yet. It feels so far off for their organization. And that's probably because when we think of things like artificial intelligence, it's the farthest advancements in the field. It's nearly sentient robots, smart assistants, cars that drive themselves. But artificial intelligence is also banner ads, programmatic advertising, chatbots, AI that uses algorithms to start helping us start bidding on consumers. It's also your next best product. So when we talk about next best product, tons of people are using product management systems that recommend other like products to customers. However, the companies that are paving the way for the future are leveraging machine learning algorithms that can analyze actual user behavior and sales data to recommend and predict other products that are someone would use once they've bought that. For repeat purchases, machine learning algorithms can begin to measure the frequency of a purchase to begin upselling add-ons directly before a reorder is placed. So if I bought a coat, tons of other companies are going to be targeting me with coats, but I already have a coat. Smart companies are going to be targeting me with boots, gloves, hats, and really smart companies are going to be targeting me with vacations to the Caribbean. Whenever we talk about chatbots, we want to think through the fact that even with a little bit of training, chatbots can start to simulate human conversations in real time with real users. Amtrak has asked Julie. She's great. Julie's a robot. Julie's not a real person. I mean, that photo is probably a real person. But the vast majority of the interactions had with her aren't. But they feel like a human interaction because the robot was taught to have a human interaction. And chatbots are available in nearly every application today, from messenger bots to website support, even to some telephone support. And when you think about the fact that people are using these in the B2C space, but it's really, really hard to find B2B examples, it's because B2B has been behind. But they need to catch up because consumers want them to catch up. If you're looking at how do I employ a chatbot, that seems really hard. I can't write algorithms. I'm not a programmer. There are so many services available now that help you go through the modeling examples, and you don't have to have a solution for every problem. Your chatbot can solve one or two common questions so that that doesn't get routed to your everyday support people, and then your everyday support people can help with the things that the chatbot can't. You have a blended option of how you approach that use for that technology. So it shouldn't be scary for people. Start playing with it. Even if you go into like Facebook Messenger right now, you can go in and create your own little chatbot for any page that you have, just to see what it's like. And you'll find, I think that it's a lot easier than most people think it is, because I think you have to be a computer programmer or be able to write algorithms, and you don't. You have to be able to do a decision tree. If you can work a PowerPoint, you can start to play around with chatbot usage.
I think getting back to the first trend, we talked about the one-to-one interaction and using the messaging apps, especially in the B2B space, because that's a lot of where Samantha works. There still really is this kind of old school versus new school battle of, we cannot replace our salespeople or our customer service reps. Like, our people don't want to talk to a robot. They don't want to talk to a website. They want to talk to a real person. And while at certain points in the journey, that is absolutely true. There's no argument to be made that at a certain point in a customer experience, a real human being is going to be required to be involved. But I think that's ignoring that there are many, many touch points along the journey where you absolutely do not need a human involved, and you actually might deliver a better experience if you're doing it through digital technology. So I think it's plotting out that journey and figuring out at what points does it make sense to have a real person inserted here, and at what points can we let other tools kind of do our work for us. But unless people philosophically can get past that hurdle, it's going to be a real uphill battle to really embrace that and deliver that one-to-one customer experience, because there's just simply not enough salespeople and customer service reps in the world to deliver one-on-one experiences like people want.
Absolutely. So when we talk about looking at marketing tech that works smarter and not harder for you, one of the other ways that you can start planning for 2020 and your marketing technology spend in particular is really evaluating that realignment of where you're spending money for MarTech. We predict that 2020 will be the year that we start to see more and more companies trying to cut back on their stack. Not necessarily their spend, potentially where it makes sense, some spend could be cut back, but in terms of the number of applications they have to support, we see that they're going to start to simplify that and focus on the platforms that work the hardest for them in terms of both capabilities and results. In 2018, investment in marketing technology was up by 29%. However, as that spend continues to increase, people are going to want fewer and fewer contracts. It's becoming more and more to manage. There's too many options out there. You're going to need to start justifying your marketing technology. So in order to do that, the beneficial to all-in-one providers as well as the smaller technology providers that do have unique and differentiated solutions should be fine, but solutions that do little more than API and other platform data will have a rude awakening coming for them. In 2020, you need to be prepared to show your platform-dependent performance for the items that you want to keep, and be prepared to have leaders asking you to deliver on platform-specific ROI. If you're not sure where to start and how you would define that for someone, or show that this technology actually is way more impactful than this other technology that you've been sold on, even though they have a similar function, the nuances between them, anywhere that you want to prevent actual ROI, anywhere that you want to show it's going to take too much time to get that onboarded, that's a good place to start looking for a partner in that space to help you identify how to get the most out of your stack, because most people actually already have technologies that they're not even fully utilizing before they get upsold on something else that has the exact same technology that they just didn't know that they weren't utilizing.
Yeah, I mean, I think one final point on that to kind of circle back to the marketing technology investment and kind of misalignment when you already have legacy systems. I mean, one thing we've heard our clients talk a lot about it, and it's absolutely true, is the concept of technical debt and how you're going to pay now or you're going to pay later. So the temptation is, well, we've already invested a lot of money in these legacy systems. Let's just try and figure out how to bolt on different technologies to that to build this Frankenstack that maybe works, but probably doesn't. It's not going to be sustainable. It's going to introduce a whole host of problems and issues. I would equate it to, you have a 1-bedroom house and you want to end up with a 5-bedroom house. And instead of just saying, yeah, we're just going to bite the bullet and go buy this newer, nicer house that's going to be exactly what we need long term, you decide we're fairly handy. We don't want to put that upfront investment in. Let's just start remodeling. And you start adding rooms on all over the place. And all of a sudden, you might end up with what looks like and functions as a 5-bedroom house, but it's likely going to be a mess and not super functional, not super sturdy, going to leak terribly. It's just not going to be great. So I think really having hard conversations with leadership, or if you are leadership, really just taking that assessment now and saying, what of this do we need just to say our sunk costs? And let's really plan on what's going to be the right thing for the future. And as Gena said, it's likely not going to be a hodgepodge of a lot of different technologies. I think that wave is kind of past us. And it's now pretty clear, how do you build a tech stack that is going to deliver everything you want and work together seamlessly? And that's probably fewer technologies, fewer providers, as Gena said, and building something that was designed to work together. All right, so that is the end of all of our trends. Hopefully that was insightful for you guys, and will spark some good conversations when you go back to your team. So I guess just to quickly wrap it up, the 3 things we talked about: brands who master one-to-one customer interactions are going to be the ones that win. Organizations are rallying around CX as a company value, which is great. That's a huge first step to getting behaviors to change to match that intention. And then we got to figure out how to make our marketing technology work smarter, not harder. It's not about accumulating as much tech as you possibly can. It's about figuring out how can we get the most out of our investment and maybe even spend less money, but get more production out of it. So I think those are the kind of the recap of our takeaways. Gena's going to talk to you a little bit about, I asked her at the end of this, I'm a summarize kind of person. I said, give me one key takeaway from all of this. What do you want people to really walk away from this with?
And that's ultimately, if you can only do one thing in 2020, please let that be making business decisions based on your consumers' wants, needs, and desires. We market to people. It also has to be for people, about people, and people-centric. Whether that means looking at pulling in more personalization, engaging more chatbots to have human-like interactions with your consumers online, even just being available to them and messaging, however you want to go about doing that. If you even only challenge your leaders to say, but does this goal make sense for the consumer? Then I think that you are set up to win.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think we went from people talking about this for many years. For a few years, we've had people believing in it. And I think 2020 in the coming years, it's when it's going to be time to really start to take action. And the companies that do that and move beyond just talking about it and saying it to actually living it, breathing it, and holding themselves accountable to the change management to make it work are going to be the ones that win. So we want to take one final poll. Essentially, we want to just ask roughly the same question we did before and just see, after we went through all that, which of these 3 topics are really the ones that you're going to take away from here. If everybody can go ahead and vote. For us, it's just kind of curious to see where everybody landed after hearing all the content. All right, does everybody have their votes in? All right, so it looks like absolutely no one is excited about building your MarTech stack. Is that because we're terrified of the prospect of that and what it might entail? Again, that is probably the biggest and scariest one of all these. We totally understand that. That's one that we're very very busy helping our customers try and figure out. But it looks like everybody kind of stayed true from the beginning to the end. That really figuring out how do we deliver on that customer experience as a core value is what's going to be critically important. So that is exciting. Just a couple quick continued learning opportunities. These are things that if you haven't sat through any of the Samano webinars before, we do have some of them available out on our website. We've done one on understanding customer experience. So if your organization is at a point of like we're intrigued, but we don't really know what that is, that might be a great one to pull your team together and go through. If you're at the point where you really want to start utilizing marketing automation to reach a segment of one, we've got some content out there on that. And then media, knowing the media landscape has become, increasingly both complicated and opportunity driven everywhere. Becoming a master of media in the modern world is another one we've got content on. So go ahead and visit our website. You can download any of those. Like I said, those are great things to, pull your team together, pull some peers together over lunch and go through those and see if they bring you some value. We've also got just some articles that we produced, making Facebook ad counts, interactive content is the new king, turning a persona into a person. These are a little bit more action-oriented and kind of quick reads, but very shareable. Love to see these things get forwarded around if you see value in them. Again, those are at our website as well. And as we said at the beginning, thank you for attending. We do have these things recorded. You will get a copy of it if you signed up, and you can go download it at the website. If there's anything you would be interested in contacting us about, please reach out. We're always happy to have that conversation. Any final questions before we wrap up? Okay. Well, thanks everybody for dialing in, and we'll talk to you soon.